Hello everybody, I'm Dan. Welcome to my Android tutorial series. My Android tutorials are designed to create real-world examples that complement my extensive Java programming tutorial series. This tutorial is part 1 of my shopping list app. I'm going to open up my web browser to my website, javacjava.com, select the menu pop-out and select Android tutorials, and then we'll go ahead and click on shopping list part 1. So what better way to demonstrate the methods of the ArrayList class than to create a simple shopping list app? In order to follow along with this tutorial, you will not need any experience with creating Android apps. What you've learned by following my Java programming series is sufficient. If you found this tutorial and you are not familiar with my Java programming series, then you can browse through more of my tutorials on this page. Basically, this is my Java tutorials page, and specifically the shopping list one is going to cover like the ArrayList stuff here, and I've got over a dozen ArrayList tutorials here listed on the tutorial page there. Highly recommend watching all those before you continue on with that. But let's go ahead and pop back here. Now you will need to have Android Studio installed to complete this tutorial. Detailed instructions are provided in my Installing Android Studio tutorial, which is all right here. Great video if I don't say so myself, because I did it. Anyway, let's go ahead and move this off screen here and open up Android Studio. Should probably just stick that over there. Basically, if you watched my Installing Android Studio tutorial there, I had, at the very end, I was setting it up to do a grocery list. I have a little change of heart since then. I think what I'm going to do instead is a shopping list. So when you pop open Android Studio, if you were following my tutorial before, what you'll see is this. If you weren't following that tutorial, don't worry about this right here. But anyway, if you were, and it brings up it will automatically bring up the last project you were working on, which would be grocery list. Just simply go up here to File and Close Project. Okay. So we don't want to do that here. And so we'll come back to our Welcome to the Android Studio screen here. Let's click on Start a New Android Studio Project. Now we want to call this one Shopping List, because I was thinking about it, and we might want to have like multiple shopping lists in the same app. One for like Home Depot, one for the grocery store, one for the mall, so on and so forth, right? Company domain, I'm changing mine to javacjava.com. So if you have a domain, just put in your domain there. If you don't, just put in, like, for example, your name, no spaces, and .com, like danielross.com if I didn't have that. But don't use javacjava.com, because basically what this will do is this will create the package name for you based on com and then your URL and then .shopping list, which is the name of the application there. Project location, go ahead and put it in Android and then a subfolder in there, which we'll call a workspace, javacjava. You can go ahead and type in javacjava there, that's perfect. And then of course it will make this shopping list automatically for you. All right, let's go ahead and select next. We'll stick with the API 16 or whatever the default is at the time that we're, in the future it'll be something higher, I'm sure. Okay, next, and we did an empty activity last time. We're gonna do a blank activity with the floating button thingamajiggy there. So let's go ahead and hit next on that and then finish. We're good enough on that. So let's take a quick moment to pop this stuff up there. I just want to reiterate that the primary focus of creating these Android apps isn't necessarily like learning Android, although you'll pick that up along the way. It's more of solidifying your understanding of Java. But we'll go ahead and it'll be confusing at first. It won't make a lot of sense, but like many programming languages, especially Java, it will over time in working with this stuff. So the initial screen that loads up will present you with like kind of what your app is going to look like when it runs. I want to point out that basically this is in this tab right here, Content Main, and we also have this main activity.java over here. So any of your files that you have open, like if we open up activity.main, will come into new tabs. And over here on the left-hand side, you'll see these structure project captures. So like for example, if I'm in the main activity.java, which is kind of the entry point for your Android application, well, more specifically the method that onCreate is, but beside the point, if we accidentally double click on that and then that little explorer tree thing goes away there, you can get it back by clicking on project. You can also hide it by clicking on project, so on and so forth there. There's also this drop-down list up here where you have like different ways of setting. I'm going to call this like the Explorer pane, right? But we want to make sure that's set on Android there. Very similar to the good old Eclipse type stuff there. So from the top up here, we've got this manifest thing. Don't worry about that right at the moment. And then we've got our Java expanding tree here. So you'll see com.java c java or whatever you've named it, .shopping list for the package name. And then in parentheses, you'll see this Android test. Ignore this one completely. What we're interested in is this main activity right here, which is our entry point here, main activity.java, right? And so basically, what we'll do now is bring my website back over, and we want to go ahead and highlight all this source code here. Hit Control-C to copy, or right-click and select copy, and we can go ahead and move that back out of the way there. So when the onCreate method fires, which is basically whenever you, like for example, tap on your application icon and it pops up, right? Or for example, if your app was running in the background and then your phone went to sleep or your device went to sleep and then you turn it back on, right? That'll fire the onCreate and so on and so forth there. So the onCreate always gets fired. That's basically like your, definitely, consider it like your main method for Java there. So don't worry about what this stuff does yet. We're primarily interested in pasting our stuff right in here. Control-V to paste or right-click and select paste. Everything's going to be read in the IDE, which is an integrated development environment, which is what Android Studio is. So basically, if we put our focus right up here, these little balloon things, as a matter of fact, we'll pull out the plus for expand all the imports there. It's going to tell us Alt-Enter to go ahead and automatically put these things in there, right? So it just imported java.util.ArrayList, which we should be familiar with now. Now, array adapter has absolutely nothing to do with Java. It's part of the Android packages there. Android.widget.arrayAdapter is what that is there. So, and then so the next one here we need list view. Alt-Enter. List view is part of the Android packages too, and collections of course is part of the util, and so is arrays. Okay, so the only thing that we have read down here is this r.id.listView, and a lot of this stuff will look pretty confusing right at the moment. But what we want to do is we want to take these three guys here and do Shift-Delete to get them out of the way, and that cuts them basically, and I'm going to paste them up here. So the first thing we've got on this particular statement here is ArrayList of type string, right? And then I'm creating a reference variable shopping list and set it equal to null. And I'm putting these outside of this method so they can become instance variables for the main activity and be accessible for other methods in here too as well. That'll come into play a little bit later. Let's ignore the array adapter and list view for the time being. So in shopping list, right, in the onCreate, I'm setting it equal to a new instance of an array list. And of course, by leaving this empty, that will go ahead and make it, type string anyway. So then to demonstrate various different methods of populating our array list instance there, I'm first going to use the collections class, right, and invoke the add-all method, passing in the shopping list reference variable. And then basically everything after that is basically var args. So, we've got these string objects here in the var args format. It'll go ahead and populate shopping list with those. The next statement I'm doing is taking the shopping list reference variable and invoking the add-all method, and then using the arrays class and then the asList method, invoking that, and passing basically all these var args parameters in there as well. So that will add more to the list in addition to what's already in there. And then the last method that I'm demonstrating right here is just simply invoking the add method, which only takes a single parameter, right? And sunscreen and add toothpaste. All right, so at that point in time, we've populated our array list and demonstrated, that sort of stuff there. So what we need to do now is come over here and talk a little bit about what a list view is, right? And the list view declaration is up here. List view is the name of the class. So it'll be a list view type. LV is just the name of the reference variable I've assigned to it there. So in this res folder, which is short for resources, we've got various different things in there. And when this first popped up, you saw this content.main.xml. So this is all just all the resources and layouts and stuff are pretty much done in XML for Android, Extensible Markup Language. If you're unfamiliar with that, is what that's short for. But excuse me, we've got the activity main, which is, this is how your application is going to look when it's loaded in into basically the emulator. And I have the emulator off screen basically loaded up just to save time right over here, there, right? And so this kind of gives you a pretty accurate representation of it. Some things don't actually show it very well because it's just more of a GUI design there. So in our main activity, well, actually, let's go back to this here. On the design, we have like this purple bar up here, which is an action bar. And then, so you can see that we've got our app bar layout up here, right? And it's got its little toolbar and everything like that. And don't worry about all this right at the moment there. And then down the bottom, we have what's called a floating action bar, which is this button plus some stuff that pops up when that button is clicked. Inside of that, we've got an include layout for the content main. So the content main is another XML file over here. When we open that up, we see kind of the same exact thing, but what it really is, it's in between the action bar, or the action bar, and in between the floating action bar. So if we go over here to the XML text, we can see, for example, relative layout. And don't worry about all this stuff and all these settings and properties and all this right now. It kind of looks kind of scary there, but the only thing that's really in there is this white space and this hello world text view. We don't want that text view there. We want to just go ahead and get rid of that text view there. So when we move back to the design, you can see the hello world is gone. What we do want to add is in a list view. So let's go ahead and scroll down to where we see the list views. There it is, under containers. And we're just going to drag this over here. I'm going to position it in the upper left and the top corner there. And it will basically fill the whole entire screen. And that's, the term view is used quite often in Android, and that comes from the view class, which is way up the hierarchy there. So everything is like a view or a sub-view when you're looking at like on-screen visual things there. So this is a list view that will hold list items tied to our array list. Now the question is okay, so we can picture our array list in our mind's eye there. You know, it's got all this stuff in it right now. And then now we can actually see on the screen inside of the content main XML, we now have this list view right here, okay? And the list view is assigned an ID right here. Android ID is the property, and it's just called list view with a lowercase l and uppercase v. So the question is how do we get the elements of that array list to show on the screen? And the answer to that is what's called an array adapter. So it will adapt the actual like object, the array list object, into the list view. So let's go back to the main activity, and that's what this array adapter is right here. And of course, you know, you can use the setting the type variables to there to string as well, and the adapter is basically what I'm just calling the reference variable there. So adapter down here, I'm setting that equal to a new array adapter, and then this particular constructor takes 3 arguments there. So this being, of course, the current object, the main activity, and then this layout right here, Android.r.layout.simple-list-item1 is basically like a canned layout that Android provides, and in the list view, it's just basically means you're just going to have a single item, not like an item and then another sub item or something like that, right? And then shopping list is, of course, our array list, right? So those are the 3 parameters it takes. Now, in this next statement here, LV, which is the list view, we're going to find its view by ID. And don't worry about that right at the moment there, but just notice here's that list view right there with the lowercase l and the uppercase v, right? Then the last thing we're going to do is take that list view and right, which is this guy right here, it's kind of highlighted in blue, and we are going to invoke the setAdapter method and pass it the adapter, which will basically adapt our shopping list array list into a nice visual form for the list view. All right, at this point, let's go ahead and bring over our emulator here and run this. So I'm going to come up here and click on this little green arrow here to run it. And when we click on that, what's going to happen is it will do some waiting and stuff like that. And we'll select the emulator here. I also have a Samsung S4 plugged into my machine right at the moment here, but I'm going to click OK for the emulator. You'll see down here in the bottom, Gradle build running. It isn't very obvious, but once you know it's down there, you can kind of see, like, otherwise it looks like it's doing nothing, and you might be like, what is going on? So it is incredibly slow doing this with the emulator on screen. Emulator like this, a physical Android device plugged into your computer, it would have already, like, literally loaded it up, showed it on your Android screen. It's probably 100 times faster than doing that, but that's no good for the video here. So this will pull up here in just a second there. And you can see it took, there we go. All right, finally. All right, so here's our shopping list app, and we can click on this emulator and hold down the left mouse button and drag our little list around there, and then that's pretty cool, right? So that kind of gives you an idea on how it works there. Each one of these is separated by this little bar, and that's part of this Android R layout simple list item one thing there, right? And all our elements are populated in here in the order that they are in the array list, okay? So this is all well and good, but we want to expand the shopping list quite a bit over the next few tutorials. But the last thing I'm going to do in this tutorial is sort it there. If we click on the floating action bar, it brings up like replace with your own action. These are all just like templated stuff. Click on the action bar up here with the menu options, we've got settings in there, okay? So what I'll do is I'll add another menu option called sort up there, and let's go ahead and do that now. Let's come over here to the main activity, and what we have is we have an onCreate menu, options menu, right? This is the options menu up here, and so we are going to add a sort to that, a sort list. So we're going to come over here to our resources, and underneath the menu resource, we got our menu main, right? And it has this item in here called action settings, and we are going to simply just hit Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste, and we're going to create a new action called sort, okay? And we're going to set its order in the category to 200. Don't worry about that right at the moment. And you'll see this title equals @string action settings. Well, everything in Java, everything in Android is basically XML based. So you don't really, we could just simply type in there, sort list. But then we have a problem if we want to translate or make our app compatible across many different languages like Spanish, French, whatever, right? English, so on and so forth there. So if we start hard coding stuff in there, it's not a good thing. And I'll show you later on down the road in Android programming how you can do that sort of stuff. But inside of this values tree here, we've got the strings.xml. Okay, so you'll see action settings. And if we pop back up to here, you can see string action settings. So we're going to create a new string called action sort. And so we'll just string. Gee, if I could type today, that'd be good. Name equals action sort, right? And just call this sort list. All right, so now if we click back here, that red goes away, we're cool there. And this ID is action sort. So basically, we come back to the main activity and we're going to go into the on options items selected. And we're going to see if the ID is equal to action sort instead. Right, so I'm going to highlight this, hit Control-C to copy, and Control-V to paste this stuff, and just simply change this to sort. So when that's selected, we want to do a few things. I want to use the collections class and invoke the sort method, and I'm going to pass in my shopping list, array list, as the argument there, and that will sort it. And by doing that, that won't change anything on the screen. We have to let our list view, right, which contains all this, we have to let it know that we've kind of changed the order of the array list. It won't automatically do that. We just have to tell it by saying basically, LV, which is the reference variable, and then do this set adapter method here, right? And then adapter. The adapter will automatically refresh it. That's no problem. That's its job, is to basically take the array list and keep a handle on it. So in case anything needs to be updated there. So we'll just set the adapter again, and that's sufficient to cause the whole entire screen to, well, basically not the whole entire screen, the list view to refresh. All right. Let's go ahead and run this. And while that is going there, I'm just going to hit the little back out of this here on that. And don't be intimidated by a lot of the stuff that the Android stuff there. You'll pick all that up. Learning Android and everything like that is really quite complicated. So remember, just kind of the primary focus here is, ArrayList and working with its various different methods and everything like that, which ultimately kind of build you into the Java collections class. So, all right, so that pops up. You can see we've got our unordered list in the exact same order that we loaded up the ArrayList there. Now, if we click on the, the little settings thing on the action bar up top there, and we select sort list, that will now sort our list, right? So that's pretty cool there. All right, well, that will pretty much do it for part 1 of this tutorial. Part 2 and, well, future tutorials there, we'll do some stuff like, obviously this is pretty worthless for a shopping list. You wouldn't go in and edit your source code and, recompile it to your phone every time. So we want to add in functionality to, add individual items to there, remove individual items, and so on and so forth there. So anyway, that concludes this tutorial. Thanks for watching.